fuselage. They've got two different...
this is the engine I think we're looking at, Jerry.
Yeah, the engine they've got two separate incidents. One is about 4 blocks from the other. They've got a third alarm fire at the site where the engine is, and a fifth alarm fire where the actual fuselage landed. Both of these are residential neighborhoods out in the Rockaways. The police department at this point in time has a level 3 mobilization, which is several hundred police officers, both for security and to assist with crowd control and with body recovery and in trying to coordinate the scene. As you know, the mayor is out there right now. There is, at this point in time, nobody has any real indication of any terrorist-related issues with this. Again, it's premature to make any judgments other than the fact that everybody appears to know that the engine did come off, separate from the aircraft.
Jerry, let me ask you this. Do you know anything about civilian casualties on the ground, people hurt on the ground?
Yeah, I am told that there are people on the ground that were, it is a densely populated residential neighborhood. There are a number of houses burning at this point, but they have no numbers at this point in time. The only numbers I've gotten are the same ones you've heard, 246 passengers and 9 crew members.
Thanks, Jerry, very much. Appreciate you calling in, Jerry Hauer, who's so much help to us during the attack on the trade towers. I'd like to go back to that picture of what we believe is the engine again, please, and bring in our aviation analyst, John Nance, because while it looks like an engine in this particular case, that's what we're told it is. It came in on a piece of videotape from the region itself. And John, as you look at this particular picture, what can you tell us?
Well, basically, what we're seeing there, Peter, is an engine that obviously fell at high speed to the ground. It's I don't know whether, of course, it's right or left, but it's consistent with the report that we had from Mr. O'Rourke that the engine came off of the aircraft, separate from the crash side of the aircraft, is what indicates that. In other words, when you have two different sites. And one thing I'd like to go into real briefly here, just on the aerodynamics. When you have an airplane at fairly high power, a twin-engine jet like this, climbing, you are above stall speed, of course, but if you lose an engine on one side and catastrophically departs the aircraft, one of two things could explain a loss of control. One, as I had mentioned earlier, is if the engine, as it went, changed the configuration of the wing. In other words, tore apart the ability of the right wing to fly at as slow a speed as the left wing, by taking off some of the leading edge flaps. If that was so, you might immediately have it roll over and cause the loss of control. And that's very likely a scenario that could explain this.
John, John, excuse me for interrupting you. As you look at it right now, there's a lot of damage in the rear, or what appears, well, it could be the front or the rear. There's some damage on the side. Does that tell you anything at all? You're such a good analyst of these things.
Well, the only thing that you might be able to make from that is that if you had a turbine section that really exploded catastrophically, you're going to be able to see a rip in the engine cowling, and it could be consistent with what I'm looking at there. When an engine like this, which is a high bypass turbofan engine, explodes internally, in other words, the blades become uncontained, as it's called in the esoteric language. They will tear through the cowling, and that's not inconsistent with the damage that I see here. Although caution, of course, is that damage could have been caused by the impact of the engine falling free to the ground.
Exactly. I very much appreciate it. You wanted to make one more point. I interrupted you.
No, the other problem, or the other thing is, Peter, that if you are again in that takeoff mode and only 20 or 30 knots above stall speed, even if the aerodynamics do not change, when you have power remaining only on one side, if you happen to let the aircraft get too slow, which would probably not be the case, the aircraft then on the good side, the engine that's still powering the aircraft, will tend to raise that wing, and you could theoretically lose control. That's highly unlikely because of the experience of these pilots.
John, thanks very much.
All right, so we'll interrupt ABC's coverage to bring you back to local coverage and throw it immediately to Jeff Rawson, who is standing by. Jeff, can you hear us out in Bell Harbor? We're right there at the scene. Jeff?
I can hear you. First, let me tell you where we are. Beach Channel Drive and Beach 128th Street. I want to introduce you to someone who saw this as it happened. She is quite shaken up. Luigi, what exactly did you see?
What happened was I was making coffee in my kitchen, and all of a sudden I heard this big rumble, like the house was shaking up. And I said, "My God, what happened?" I said, and I heard the plane. It was a plane. I thought it was the Concorde, but then all of a sudden a plane over my house, just like this, and it was on fire. It was on fire. I said, "Oh my God, it's gonna go down." And soon enough, boom, it went down. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was so scary. It pissed my house just this much. I live right here. It was terrible, and I was screaming. I was calling 911, but the line was busy, and all of a sudden, all everything.
Luigi, thank you so much. Something else I just want to show you, Matt, is you can get up over here. This is a location where all the choppers are flying into. We see a good deal of air support here, and in the water as well. The Coast Guard is there, and I'm not sure you can see from this vantage point, there is a diving marker in there, which means police expert search and rescue divers are in the water, we can assume looking for survivors. And as we go to the right, you can see this New York City police chopper hovering low over the water as well. Coast Guard, New York City police in the water and in the air, along with fighter jets as well. We are at this staging area, and we'll bring you the very latest as we get it. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Jeff, thank you.
Quite the scene. As we said, a couple of Coast Guard cutters out there as well, and several other helicopters.
And to hear that woman's description of what she heard and saw. Need to go to Jim Dolan. Last time we saw you, at least in this arena, was here on September 11th. From what you have been able to read and to hear about and talk to your sources, give us what your feelings are.
Well, we want to say that the NTSB, we know for sure, is on the scene now, so they are investigating. They are the ones who will eventually determine what happened on this flight. But let me talk a little bit about the Airbus 300 and its history. There have been 8 incidents before today in which people died on board an Airbus 300. In 3 of those incidents, they were hijackings that went wrong, so we won't discuss those. One, you may remember, an Airbus 300 was shot down in July of 1988 near the Straits of Hormuz. That was shot down by an American naval vessel. It was an Iran aircraft. That was a mistake during heightened tensions out there. There were 3 collisions on approach, but there's only one of these that comes remotely close to being a mechanical problem, and that happened back in April of 1994 on a China Airlines A300. The crew errors led to the aircraft stalling and crashing during its approach to the airfield. All 15 crew and 249 of the 264 passengers were dead there. So before this incident today, we just want to stress we don't know what happened out there today, but before today, the mechanical history of these aircraft have been very good. And again, the aircraft has been flying for a long time. It was an A300, in fact. You may remember the incident in Entebbe when an A300 was hijacked. It was taken to Entebbe. There was a commando raid on that aircraft. That was an Airbus A300 way back in 1979. So it's been in the air a long time, has a good safety record. Again, we don't know what happened today.
That's what you were saying earlier.
Right, and that they have at least, what, a 20-year? How long would you normally have an aircraft of this category still operating?
Well, they make those assessments as they go along, but an aircraft with this kind of safety record that is in the air, this is a widely used aircraft, especially in Europe. It is probably the most popular aircraft in Europe for big transportation, and with this kind of a safety record, they can keep working on it and keep it going.
And Barrett Burns from JFK said when he was talking about it was an A306, and that he felt like there was no word, no anything in the 2 minutes that flight was in the air from 9:15 to 9:17.
No Mayday.
No Mayday, no thing like that.
And what we're being told by sources on the ground at Kennedy now is that the pilot in this aircraft did in fact do a pre-flight inspection. He walked around the aircraft. You've seen pictures of that where they walk around, they check all those things that the mechanics are supposed to take care of to make sure that they were taken care of before this flight went off, that the pilot in this case did perform that pre-flight check and the visual inspection that goes along with that. And apparently he was comfortable with the aircraft.
That says a lot.
Yes, it
that
does.
he would go behind the mechanics even.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Jim Dolan, stay by.
We'll be back with you in just a second.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to Lisa Calagrassi for the very latest on what situation is out there. Lisa?
Well, Lori, Mayor Rudy Giuliani was out here on the scene practically a few minutes after rescue personnel were, and he really wanted to brief us on what he knew. He said his first reaction was, "Oh my God," and then he rushed out to the scene. He said there are no better firefighters in the world that can handle a situation like this, especially in light of the World Trade Center attack. He said our fire crews, our rescue crews, and our police personnel are all on high alert. They are all keyed to respond to this kind of emergency. Now, a couple of the neighbors we've been talking to, a lot of people are just walking around just trying to see what happened to their friends.
Lisa, I want to interrupt you real quickly if I can, Lisa, because you can't see these pictures that are being fed into us from Bell Harbor. These are the first live pictures on tape, videotape, of the homes that were hit. I apologize for interrupting, but I felt like we should show you this, talk about this, that what we are seeing.
And it also reinforces what we just heard, that witness say how she was in her kitchen and she looked up and then she saw the aircraft actually in the flames.
Right.
But then you know how many homes were hit by this, and we certainly heard another report where we understand that there are people, I think it was from the network, that there are people on the ground.
Right.
So we just have no confirmation quite yet about the casualties involved in the residential area as opposed to those who were actually on that Airbus 300 series.
Terrible scene, and bear in mind, Lori, as we have all morning long, the Rockaways is home to so many firefighters and their families. That community suffered a heavy loss during the September 11th tragedies. In fact, they were saying, Celeste Ford told me, the school district there serving the area was heaviest hit. More than 30 children were directly involved or directly affected by 9/11.
Which is so frightening.
Yeah, these pictures, as you can see, the alarm's going off. And there's Newport at 1:30, and we were told it went down at 1:29, so this is a full block, I would imagine, speculating here.
You still have Lisa with us, Calagrassi, or she?
Yes, Lori, actually, as you mentioned, that the houses that were hit, we actually talked to a group of young girls who said, that was our friend's house. One of the houses hit was our friend's house. We know she was at basketball practice. We know her dad was golfing. We don't know where her mother was. So that's the kind of thing that's going on down here. People are trying to figure out exactly what homes were hit and where those people are, if they were even at home. School was out today, and for that they are grateful because St. Francis de Sales is in an elementary school on 129th. So that school would have been full at this time of the morning. So for that they are grateful, but certainly very, very concerned about the people who lived in the crash site area.
Once again, just reminding, since we bring up the amount of people that had come out into the streets and obviously out of their homes trying to get away from the situation there, that the New York City Office of Emergency Management has set up a family center at JFK's Ramada Inn, building number 144, for residents to go to.
Oh, New York's bravest and finest. I've seen so much, Jim Dolan, in the last 2 months.
It's been a remarkable time, and all these people, and you heard Mayor Giuliani say this earlier, a lot of people in that area affected by this. These are working people. These are folks who encourage their sons and daughters to go into the emergency services because they are good, well-paying jobs, and because they're steady work, and because they are loyal Americans, and so that is what they do, and they go into emergency service work. A lot of them live in that area. We have people in here who work at Eyewitness News who live in that area, and of course we've been out there many times to cover stories, and it is just daunting to see the neighborhood like it is right now.
Well, when you heard about Laura, Rochelle told you that her husband is a firefighter. He was off duty, grabbed his stuff, his bucket gear out of the trunk of his car.
The engine fall down first, and after that the bandit, the truck go all the way in, and here I see my eyes and I scream, everybody go out.
Just back up, you get to be mobile. Back.
What is your name? My name is Isaac Nagar. What did you see? I see at the top of the roof, and I see the plane, the engine fall down, and the plane fall, the pitch the left side and make it straight all the way down, and I see the people 100% in. I fall for him maybe like less than an half mile. Too black for there. I don't believe it. Why I see.
We want to pass along breaking news right now. The Bush administration official said the FBI believes there was an explosion aboard the plane, investigating whether it was a result of mechanical failure or sabotage.
Jim?
Well, it's all speculation at this point. I'm sure that they have more information than we do, but I just want to stress that it's way too early to speculate about what happened. There could have been an explosion on the plane, and it still might have been a mechanical problem on the plane. There's a lot of fuel on board those planes, as you know. The end result of the flight that went down off Long Island a couple of years ago was that they believed that it was an explosion on the plane, that it was mechanical work, mechanical problem on the plane, that the hot weather sparked somehow the fuel on board that plane, and that's what caused the explosion. It was not terrorism. So we just want to stress that it's too early to speculate as to whether this is a continuation of September 11th or whether this is an individual incident, as tragic as it is, that may have nothing to do with that at all.
Okay. All right, we have David Venz, who is an executive with Airbus. Mr. Venz, are you there?
Yeah.
Sir? All right, we'll have to try to get him back. But it was interesting because you had mentioned with the Long Island and Flight 800, it took a good year to reconstruct and to figure out what had happened with that particular.
And in fact, they never really did figure out exactly what happened. There are a couple of theories about what happened, but they are quite certain that it was not a terrorist act. This flight was an international flight. All of those bags are not only screened, but they are x-rayed. All of them, every bag that went onto that plane was checked extremely thoroughly. Yes, that's the plane I'm talking about. This flight here today was checked. Because it was going to Santo Domingo. I've flown a little internationally lately, so I can tell you that they are extremely careful with bags and on international flights, not only here but abroad. So you know that they were as careful as they are capable of being this morning.
And I think we also need to remind you, because I just saw it, this is raw footage. It has not been edited. So what you're watching was simply fed in as our crews got on the scene and were able to turn it around and feed it back here to our station.
Is that the body? It looks like the body of the plane there, Jim?
Sure does. Looks like that's as close as we've gotten to the body of the plane, absolutely. And it's frankly intact more than you might expect it to be. One of the things that we're talking about mechanical problems, one of the things that pilots do before they take off is they rev the engines really high, almost as high as if they were going full speed, to make sure that there's no rattling, to make sure that there's no hum in the engines. They get those things cranked up to make sure that the engines are working as well as they can. And if there's a problem, they report it to the control tower. The general procedure is the control tower tells them to go back to the gate and that they'll look into it. In this particular case, apparently, that check did not reveal any problems.
To play devil's advocate, though, Jim, I'm asking you, I guess, as more the expert. The Bush administration, which plays its cards so very, very close to the vest, a little surprising, perhaps, that they would come out and say this.
Yeah, but again, keep in mind what they said. They did say they believed there was an explosion on board the aircraft, but they didn't say that it was necessarily related to a bomb exploding, for example, or a missile going off. What they said was there was an explosion. There often are explosions that are the result of mechanical problems. I say often as there are these kinds of problems on planes. But many times there is an explosion, and when they go back to find out what it was a mechanical problem, often an arcing of cables that feeds into the fuel system, something like that.
I was just going to say that as we were looking at that video, now of course looking at the map so that you can get a better understanding of the Bell Harbor area as it relates to the rest of the city and everything being shut down at all. Does it surprise you at all, Jim, that the mayor acted pretty swiftly as far as a lockdown situation?
Not in the least. This is a guy who understands and who, to what degree he didn't understand before September 11th, has gotten a good education over the last 2 months about how to react to this kind of a situation. He has never been slow to act in an emergency situation. He was taking no chances. And by the way, again, they have had these 2 months to prepare plans for an additional incident. Those plans were in effect. I'm sure that this fell into the realm of possibility, into their thinking. And so when it happened, they just put that plan into effect. And part of that plan was definitely closing off the tunnels and bridges.
Somebody like Thomas Van Essen could probably answer this question better, but the jet fuel that is involved in this, we were talking some very high temperatures down at the World Trade Center. In fact, we still see smoke coming up from there. Are they going to be dealing with those same kind of high temperatures out there, Jim?
Yeah, but not for as long a time. Remember, the planes in the World Trade Center flew into those, and it became very tightly compacted. So here what we have is a more open situation, and if you've been to the Rockaways, you know it's always windy anyway. So that for right now it is getting fueled by that wind, but in the long term that will blow off, and the temperatures aren't nearly as high as they were inside the World Trade Center that day.
Okay. All right, we now have David Venz with Airbus on the phone. Mr. Venz, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Tell us so far what you've been able to gather about what has happened to this aircraft.
Well, we know nothing more than what the news media is currently reporting, that something happened to the airplane on takeoff, and the crash resulted. And we have no further information than that right now.
But as far as you know, and every indication we've heard, there was no Mayday call. There was, upon takeoff, there was no indication of flight trouble.
I have no reports of any of that. We have not been in touch with the control tower, so...
Sir, does that tell you anything, though, if in fact that's true? Does it give you any indication about what does it narrow down the possibilities for you, anyway?
Not necessarily, because when an airplane takes off, the pilots are busy flying the airplane. So, right now, we're not totally clear on the sequence of events, so it would be irresponsible for us, really, to guess as to what may have happened.
Does the fact that there was no Mayday call, does it mean anything about the power supply, that the power might have been turned off, or again, is that just the kind of speculation you're not
I wouldn't
interested in getting into?
No.
David, I think Jim talked about earlier, your flight record's pretty good with these Airbuses. I mean, this is not something that certainly has happened too many times.
I think you should make the distinction. We make a lot of different airplanes, so with different model types. So this is just one type.
And what's the track record then, sir, of this particular one?
This has been this airplane has had a very good record. It was the original model of this airplane was the first Airbus airplane built. So this happens to be an updated, modernized version of the airplane.
Is this the 306?
Well, it's the A300-600.
Okay.
What does that mean? It just means that it was modernized, overhauled over the last several years?
No. It was basically a different type of cockpit was put on this airplane compared to the original version, which came out in 1974.
Do you know when that was done?
This airplane came out, in the mid-1980s.
What course of action do you take now with the fleet, sir? Does everything come to a halt pending this investigation?
No, the airplanes will keep flying, and we will be working with the NTSB to determine what caused this particular accident. Mm-hmm. We will have a team of specialists on various areas of the airplane coming over from Toulouse, France, our headquarters, to assist the NTSB in examining this accident.
Do me a favor and go through what the pilot would have done before he left. Talk about the pre-flight inspection just a little bit. What kinds of things is he looking for during that?
The pre-flight inspection on this airplane is standard to any airplane, and they would do. The first officer would normally make a walk around of the airplane to determine if there are any obvious things awry on the exterior of the airplane, and then they would go through their normal pre-flight checklist to take off.
All right. David Vins, we certainly appreciate you taking a moment. We know that you have an extremely busy day. We're sorry for what has happened, of course, with the loss of life.
Well, we are too, and our hearts go out to those who lost loved ones in this accident.
All right.
As to all of ours.
Thank you, Mr. Vins.
Thank you.
If you're looking at live pictures, as we said, these are the first live pictures that come in on videotape. These are the first time that we've seen them. As you can see, firefighters working diligently there. Jeff Rawson is in Belle Harbor, quite close to what's going on down there. Jeff, what can you tell us, sir?
Well, first I want to give you a little perspective exactly where the airport is compared to the crash scene. We are on Beach Channel Drive and Beach 128th, just a couple of blocks from the crash scene. That is the airport control tower in the distance. We are less than a couple of miles away. So you can understand why the Coast Guard and New York Police now in the harbor with many boats, I count at least 6 of them, patrolling. They're using side-scan sonar, we are told, by the Coast Guard and the harbor unit looking for either parts of the plane or survivors. Now, I want to call your attention to something going on with that New York City police boat you see in front of you. Right in front of the boat, you see an orange buoy. Just ahead of that, we are told, is that little white object that seems to be stuck on a piece of mud. We're not exactly sure. They believe at this point it could be part of the aircraft. We stress could be part of the aircraft because of its close proximity. Of course, you know the engine fell off that airplane. They are very interested in finding it. That is why they are in the water right now looking for it. So you can see that New York City police boat, the orange buoy in front of it, and then it's that white object right in front of it that seems to be floating in the water that we are speaking about. We are trying to speak with the Coast Guard and the New York City Harbor Unit officials, but we are also, I tell you what, Maddie, I know this is going to be difficult for you. Can we swing around just to show people what's exactly happening down here? They have blocked off part of the road over here, and the crashing is just down that way. The media, of course, is gathering here as well. And Maddie, I'm going to ask you to come back one more time, and you can see the power happening right above us right now. There is a chopper in the air, and this is the site right in this grassy area right over here where they're using to land all the choppers. This is the staging area right now. Again, we are trying to figure out exactly what that object is in the water. As soon as we do know definitively, we will let you know. Back to you.
All right, Jeff, thank you. Now let's go back to Lisa Colagrassi, who has an eyewitness with her. Lisa?
Well, Lori, it's been a scary moment for residents here. I'm joined by another one, Connie Catania. What did you see this morning?
Well, I was sitting in my kitchen having a cup of coffee, and the sun caught my eye, and I just looked to the left, and I saw the tail of a plane just aiming for the ground, and I felt an impact, and then I saw smoke, and I started screaming in my kitchen. I just couldn't believe my eyes. Here we go again, you know? Oh, it's just terrible.
You mentioned before how hard Rockaway was hit. This area was hit in the World Trade Center.
Very bad. My neighbor across the street's husband barely got out. And incidentally, the Darios are okay. Oh, they're all right. We're all okay. My family's all worried about us. They can't get through to us, but we're okay.
Are they letting you back in your home now?
Yes, I can go back in my home for now. I don't know if they're going to evacuate us because of the fuel. I haven't heard anything, but it could be a possibility.
Very scary morning for you.
Very
Absolutely.
scary.
Thank you so much, Connie, for your insight. A lot of people have just been milling around. There's probably more people out on the streets right now than in their houses because everyone is trying to see what's going on, see if they can tell exactly where the homes were that were hit, trying to find out, talk to neighbors and loved ones. As she mentioned, her friend came in from Manhattan, actually was able to get back here to Manhattan to check on her family. She's got some children at home. So it's been a very tense morning. Everyone just trying to touch base, a lot of frustration with cell phones. Same situation as there was September 11th, people trying to get a hold of their loved ones and friends, and it's very difficult. But little by little, they're able to get in contact with their families and make sure that everyone's okay. And like I said, police have been going door to door to make sure that everyone is okay. And obviously they're concentrating on that crash site. And if there are survivors there, they're going to do their very, very best to get to them. Steve and Lori?
All right, Lisa, thank you. Just I want to bring you up to date on something that was recently crossed the wire in Washington. A senior administration official saying that no threats against airplanes had been received and that the pilot reported, which we've been saying, no trouble before the crash. Also, a U.S. official speaking on condition of anonymity said intelligence agencies and the FBI, as well as the Federal Aviation Administration, were reviewing all recent intelligence for any signs that terrorism was involved. But so far, no immediate evidence pointing to an attack.
Just being told the UN is closed for pedestrians and all vehicles. The UN building is now closed. Also, too, family members wishing to receive information about passengers that could have been aboard may contact American Airlines at the following toll-free number. We'll repeat it here. 800-245-0999. Again, and we'll put that number up in just a few minutes, I'm sure, graphically. 800-245-0999. There it is right there. If you have a loved one on that plane or need some information, if you are someone on the ground, that is the number to call. American Airlines can better fill you in.
Okay, let's go to Joe Torres now at the Throgs Neck. Joe?
Yeah, Lori, let's bring you up to speed on in terms of traffic. You've heard over and over that bridges and tunnels leading into the city are closed. We are on the Bronx side, the foot of the Throgs Neck Bridge. You can see off in the distance the toll plaza. They've got the emergency trucks, tow trucks blocking it off. And then just a fantastic job that we've seen. These are officers from the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, allowing only emergency vehicles, like you see the one approaching right now. Those are the only ones that are getting through. We tried to go to Queens. We went over to the Whitestone Bridge first, talked to the officers there. They would not let us cross. We came over to the Throgs Neck Bridge here. The same thing happened. So we just parked alongside of the road to try to bring you the perspective on traffic. And what's happening is you're approaching the bridge from the Bronx on 295. If you're on the right side of the road, they're going to simply just push you off on the last exit here before the toll, Harding Avenue, Pennyfield Avenue, exit 9. If you're approaching on the left-hand side of 295 as you approach the bridge, what they're going to do is just push you out into the median, and then they're just simply going to turn you around and head you somewhere else. You can be anywhere but here. That's the thought process of the officers here. I will tell you this, we've talked to a couple of drivers just showing remarkable patience, understanding that the world we live in now is going to be something like this, that people are going to have to deal with the inconveniences as police, fire, emergency service workers do whatever they have to do to make sure everyone is safe and sound. But again, traffic, I can't tell you how far it's backed up because we got out here pretty early, but traffic has been moving somewhat as as they direct the cars onto the side streets here in the Bronx, and again back the other direction heading towards the Cross Bronx Expressway and the George Washington Bridge. But again, that's the way it stands now from a traffic perspective. We heard the mayor say probably about 40 minutes ago that it would be an hour, 2 hours before the bridges are open once again. That's what we've been passing on to the drivers here. But everyone understanding, if it takes a little longer, it takes a little longer. So that's the way it is here for the Throgs Neck Bridge. Let's go back to you in the studio.
Well, Joe, I think everyone is understanding about this time.